So the NVIDIA RTX 4070 Ti, I kind of told you guys so. It's really not the best GPU. It has a couple of things going for it, but it has some major problems. I think the only reason that people buy it is that really it's going to be the cheapest like high-end GPU before you get to the 4080, which is like $400 more. So I think that's going to be a big reason that people like to defend the 4070 Ti. Remember, this was going to be a 4080 12 gigabyte and NVIDIA changed the name, but I think they should have changed it to something else or reduced that initial $799 price for the 4070 Ti. It now is going to have a pretty major problem. Remember those super GPUs coming out? There are some rumors that a potential 4070 Super with 16 gigabytes of VRAM may be coming out. And yes, that means 256-bit memory bus, which is more than the 192-bit bus of the 4070 Ti. This is going to be important when you want to play high resolution, 4K, you want to do ray tracing, and do things that really tax that VRAM. That definitely starts to play a role. You may say these GPUs are meant for 1440p, but if you're spending $800 on a 4070 Ti, you should be able to play 4K. 4K is not a rare resolution that it's so expensive. TVs are 4K that are pretty affordable. 4K monitors are basically almost as cheap as 1440p monitors now, so it's not really an excuse to say that it can't do 4K. It's just an excuse for the poor, memory specs that GPU has. So a 4070 Super also means another two important things. It's going to perform better than a 40 Super. Obviously, there's a pretty big gap between a 4070 and a 4070 Ti in terms of traditional rasterization. Right now, they both have 12 gigabytes of VRAM. That's all very similar, but if you put any of those two up against each other, obviously you're going to get better performance, especially 1440p with a 4070 Ti. So while we don't know exactly how much better a 4070 Super will be, it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So those are some pretty good positives. It's going to be closer to a 4070 Ti, maybe halfway between the 4070 and the 4070 Ti, and it's going to have arguably better VRAM than the 4070 Ti, and a lot of games, even 1440p, you already start to sort of go by that threshold of 12 gigabytes of VRAM, especially if you want to do higher resolutions. You're going to want 16 gigabytes of VRAM, in my opinion, for like a higher end GPU. But where does this GPU actually destroy the 4070 Ti? That's if NVIDIA releases it at $599. That would mean that the $799 4070 Ti would be really not that attractive of a proposition. Right now, some people may want to go for the 4070 Ti if it, provides better rasterization in the games that they're playing. But then if you have a competing 4070 with 16 gigabytes of, 256-bit VRAM, and the performance isn't really going to be all that far off from a 4070 Ti, and it's $200 cheaper, I think that's going to sway a lot of people to look at that GPU as sort of the entry into the high end instead of it being the 4070 Ti. So the only thing that I could see that could maybe change that math a little bit is if NVIDIA releases a 4070 Ti like Super variant at $799, and then the existing 4070 Ti, you would have to imagine it's going to have to drop down to maybe $699. Then you still have a $100 delta between these two GPUs, and I think it's still better to save $100, have more VRAM, and pretty close rasterization performance. In terms of speculation, of course, we don't know what the actual numbers will be. But that's pretty interesting, and that shows you that NVIDIA is well aware that the VRAM limitations of the recent GPUs are all a problem. You can go back, starting with the 8 gigabyte GPUs, which in 2023, definitely not good. Gamers were not happy. Look at the $399 4060 Ti. Nobody likes it having 8 gigabytes of VRAM. That's still too little in 2023, even for a cheaper GPU. I can't call it entry level because it's a $400 GPU. That's why NVIDIA has a 16 gigabyte version of the 4060 Ti, which, of course, it's going to be way too expensive to make any sense unless that gets down to $399. Maybe all of these will start pushing the prices down. So we've only talked about the competition here with NVIDIA themselves. Don't forget another key player. The AMD 7800 XT could be the biggest reason why NVIDIA is actually doing this. At $499 and with 16 gigabytes of VRAM itself, it presents a lot of the factors that would make somebody choose it over a 4070. It's $100 cheaper to start with, 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and also in terms of rasterization, it often can beat the RTX 4070. So it's not like it's a GPU that's underperforming. Obviously, if you throw in ray tracing and some of the NVIDIA specific technologies like DLSS3, then the NVIDIA GPUs will still be superior. But in general, for rasterization, for most normal gaming, you could argue the 7800 XT is a much better bang for your buck. If NVIDIA releases that 4070 Super, however, with the same amount of VRAM, better ray tracing performance, it's definitely going to be more efficient because the NVIDIA RTX 4000 GPUs have been very efficient this generation, then you could see people maybe splurging $100 to get that 4070 Super with more comparable performance to the 7800 XT. So you see that entire mid-range really could go through a lot of change. Obviously, nothing is happening on the 4080 and 4090 front. Even if there's a 4080 Super, that's just more competition with NVIDIA themselves, since AMD's 7900 XTX is still pretty much under 1,000, so it's not going to compete really over 1,000 with those GPUs. You could argue if it's a better bang for buck or not, depending on the type of games you're playing, but I think if there's an area of the GPU market that's going to be really shaken up during the next few months, if any of these releases end up happening, it's definitely going to be that mid-range between, I would say, the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte pricing, 7800 XT, the 4070 Super, and reaching all the way up to the 4070 Ti, because I think a really good 4070 Super with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, $599, if it performs really well, that's definitely going to cannibalize some of the sales for the 4070 Ti. And then we're going to have to see how everything shakes out in terms of actual street pricing and things like that. All right, guys, let me know what you think down below. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.